Warning, this podcast contains spoilers for so much stuff. The Thor and Love and Thunder trailer and the comics that the movie and trailer are based on, with lots of theories in which we speculate about what might happen in that said movie, so be warned. The Thor Love and Thunder trailer has been released. That was thunder. It was people have been bullying the MCU at Disney. Released the teaser trailer, and we got it, folks. A super exciting trailer that shows Thor on his journey of self-discovery with our good friends, the Guardians of the Galaxy. Notably, as listeners of this podcast will recall, one of the things we opined about with the Multiverse of Madness trailer is maybe the villain isn't in it, although it certainly seems like Wanda is the villain, but maybe the villain isn't in it. Here is a trailer in which the villain does not appear.
No.
There's a lot here to unpack. Rosie, what jumped out at you?
Well, I thought it was absolutely lovely, very Taika-ish, as campy and kind of rock and roll, glam rock as you would want it to be after Ragnarok, which is one of my favorite MCU movies. We'll get to the big reveal at the end, which is obviously kind of the most memorable moment. But I loved kind of seeing it looks like we're going to see Thor go on a hero's journey to find himself. So I kind of like seeing all the different versions of Thor. We see Thor and he's training with Surtur's chains and he's wearing a hat where he's written like strongest Avenger. And it's got the old Avengers logo from the comics. I'm really interested that his Guardians of the Galaxy costume, or should we say as Guardians of the Galaxy, it looks like it's based on the 90s Thunderstrike stuff where Eric Masterson was Thor, and it's very extreme and he's got sleeveless. I'm really into, like, I got really into romance stuff recently. Like I've always collected vintage romance comics because like Kirby and a bunch of other big creators made them, but like I got really into real romance. So I loved like the pirate where he's like kissing the pirate. It just looks so fun. And I think the final moment of the trailer and also the poster, which said like the one and only, and then they released another poster today that kind of contradicted that. I like the idea that this might be a space where we see like multiple iterations of Thor, which is such a big part of the comic book history.
Right. So to your point, this story, certainly from the trailer, appears to be a melding of two separate, really, really great, like all-time great comics arcs. Created by Jason Aaron with art by Esad Ribic for the first one, and then the second one, Jason Aaron with art by the great Russell Dauterman. They are about 5 years apart. The first one deals with the appearance of Gore the God Butcher, who apparently had been stalking Godflesh and the Godly for centuries before his appearance, and attempt to basically massacre all the gods of the galaxy and the universe. And then the second story, Mighty Thor, in which a new Thor appears. Now, there was a lot of excitement at the time when this was running because a significant part of the buzz was like, oh, what is the identity of this Lady Thor? We don't know
new Thor.
Who could it be? And you had several issues before it was revealed that it was Jane Foster. Now, okay. Question. We see that she's got Mjolnir, and I'm gonna call the main MCU timeline 616, even though that's never been officially established, right? She has what we see is the hammer that was destroyed in Thor Ragnarok by Hela, right? She crushes it and been pieced together. Not the alternate version Mjolnir that appeared in Endgame. Okay, how does she get it? Because because Hela crushes it, right, in Ragnarok. She destroys it in Norway right after Loki and Thor watch Odin, just decide to pass from the earthly coil. So how does it reassemble and how does she get it? Now, quick backup here. In the comics, the Jane gets the hammer on the heels of the original Sin storyline, in which is basically like a whodunit. The Watcher is killed, right? And the whole series is about who killed the Watcher. And at the end of this, I'm not going to spoil it, but Thor loses the ability to pick up the hammer. He becomes unworthy, and it is later revealed that Mjolnir has like agency, like has a personality, has some sort of consciousness, and it just basically decided, oh, Jane Foster, you're great. I remember you. You've always been around. We know each other. We've been around each other for many years. You are worthy, and you get to pick up the hammer and wield the power of Thor. Which was very handy for her at the time because she was suffering from cancer. And while she was Thor, she's, of course, wields the power of the Asgardian god of thunder. But then when she did not have the hammer, she was a ill mortal.
Yeah.
A really heartrending story that is just wonderful and worth your time. So the question is, how does she get the hammer? And do we think Mjolnir has agency, a consciousness, can think kind of the way it does in the comics?
I think that because we're looking at what seems to be a story that's going to focus on the notion of gods, godly powers, all kinds of different iterations of mythological gods. We see Zeus in this trailer, which is very interesting because Zeus and Thor, those kind of reflective mythologies. And I think that the idea of a sentient Mjolnir that essentially finds someone that is so worthy it's worth the hammer being fixed. Also, I would say, so New Asgard, Norway, not too far apart. Like you could find a way. I also think there's something to we saw Thor forge Stormbreaker in like a dying star or whatever kind of over the top stuff that happened when he needed to. So I think there could be something like Jane is drawn to New Asgard and finds the pieces and forges it herself. Yeah. It is also magical. So it could just come back together. If the world needs a Thor, and we know that our Thor, Odin's son, he is not taking on that role in the same way.
Right.
He is not the worthy Thor. He's on his own journey of self-discovery, which means she is going to be a necessary hero for kind of the universe and the protection of the balance of things. And something I think is really interesting about the cancer story, which from a toy release that was announced today, which was like a Thor's helmet replica, it seems like the movie is going to follow. In the comics, the most interesting thing that they did that I just think is still so clever, every time Jane took on the persona of Mighty Thor and got those powers, the hammer would purge her system of all chemicals, including, and all toxins, including the chemotherapy drugs.
Right. She gets sicker,
which would mean she would get sicker every time. So instead of it being some kind of like magical disability cure or something, instead it was actually this choice that she had to make about the space of being a hero. I see that you've had an idea. Tell me.
Okay, so spoiler again, kind of for the comics, but not really. So Thor names Jane to the Congress of Worlds, where she represents Midgard, amongst the gods in their deliberative body. In this trailer, we see a scene in which Valkyrie is presiding over a renewable energy treaty debate about what's going on. What did Jane Foster formerly study?
Yes, exactly. Right? She's like,
I think that's how she gets it. Well, she goes to New Asgard as part of like this, as either a science commission or helping out New Asgard with whatever their role is.
That's so clever.
In this renewable energy thing, right? And so it's kind of like the Congress of Worlds. She becomes part of like an Asgardian politician, essentially. And that's how she gets it.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. And if you think about something else that I've been trying to put together, one of the moments in the trailer, which is very fun in 80s, we see our two goats that we've been waiting to see.
My little goaties. I love my goaties.
Tooth Gnasher, and his little bud. And we see them pulling the boat, which we now know, thanks to Lego, is called the Goat Boat, which is just incredible. And on the Goat Boat, there is actually a sign from the movie Cocktail that says cocktails and dreams. Yeah. But during that, Valkyrie is on that boat in her kind of more warrior themed outfit, her battle outfit. And it looks like at some point she is going to need to leave the leadership of New Asgard because it just doesn't work for her. We see her being bored. And what if Jane could be that person and take that place?
Well,
I think that would make a lot of sense.
I think it makes a lot of sense, and certainly it is in line with Jane's current status in Marvel Comics now as one of the famed warrior women, the Valkyrie. Yeah, I think that's how they bring her. I think that would be how they. A lot of that makes sense. Okay, other questions for you. We don't see Gore at all, and we would assume that many of these gods they're gonna shuffle off their deity Coil. We're gonna see him go bye-bye because Gore is gonna go crazy, release the god bomb, and he's gonna kill a lot of gods. Are the Guardians, you think, in it the whole time? Like, are they part of the fight the entire time, or is Thor just kind of like on his own for the first, say, third of the movie, hanging out until Jane is like, hey, we need you back?
So I think it's going to be the Asgardians of the Galaxy kind of opening, Thor doing his thing with them. I do think from toy stuff, as always, which is how we apparently get all information now, I think the Guardians of the Galaxy will be relatively involved. But I think James Gunn recently said that the third movie would be like the last time we saw them as a team. So I think this is going to be more of a goodbye to them and a kind of launch pad for Jane, because, you know, we've talked about this before, but in the Mark Waid all new, all different Avengers, you had a team that was made up of Jane, Thor, Falcon, Captain America, Miles Morales, Viv, who is the Vision's daughter, and Kamala Khan. Very much the direction of where we're going. So I think that there's something really interesting in that. I also think the true reason I think Gore isn't in this trailer, I think that is going to be a very CG heavy character.
Yeah, they may not have that.
And I think you need to get the post on that, like, absolutely banging.
You got to nail it.
So what I want to know.
Yeah, let's hear it.
It's like, so they did this King in Black story recently, where they basically connected Gore to like the symbiote and Null.
That was a big deal. And
it was a really big deal. Yeah. And I wonder if there's going to be something about the symbiote being left at the end of Spider-Man and that being connected to Null and them giving the symbiote more of a deep cosmic alien lore than it originally has in the kind of classic Spider-Man comics.
I would bet that is like almost 100%. Now, it off of that, the Black Blade, the weapon of the Black Knight, right? In the Thor comics, there is Gore's weapon is called the Necro Sword, which is kind of like the symbiote black sword that when you stab a god with it and they just they keel over and die. Very powerful, very deadly, and absolutely diabolical. When we see the sword at the end of the Eternals, it has that kind of symbiote sheen where it kind of ripples and moves.
Yes.
I wonder if we're going that way too, where yes, of course, like the symbiote is related to Gore somehow. They are of the same essence, and not only that, Dane Whitman's sword is somehow maybe not the Necro Sword, but something related to it.
I wouldn't be surprised because like the Arthurian lore very much leans into the mythology aspect of what they're doing, and the Necro Sword is like this evil weapon, and the way that they're representing the ebony blade in the movies definitely is closer towards the version of it where it like drives you mad if you use it, and it has this kind of possession of you. So yeah, I think there's a lot of really interesting spaces there. And also the MCU is getting heavily into artifacts. I know it's always been into artifacts because of the Infinity Gems, aka stones, and like, but this feels very artifact heavy. So I wonder what the MacGuffin artifact is going to be here, because we've already had the Mjolnir search, we've had the forging of Stormbreaker. I think that there's going to be some kind of, it could be the Necro Sword. There's going to be something that they have to find, and we know that they really want to look to the comics in this. There are scenes in the trailer that are taken directly from Asad Ribic's art in Thor: God of Thunder. So I think like looking to those comics and specifically those two arcs, you're going to get a really great primer for what you might be about to see in this film.
One more question. Do we see Hercules? Hercules, of course.
I think we see Hercules.
Long running Avenger for many years. Funnily enough, when you were talking about Eric Masterson, Thunderstrike, the Thor of the 90s, who was not Thor Odinson.
Extreme Thor.
Extreme Thor. I always think about the we talk about this arc a lot, but Siege, Under Siege, Roger Stern written, penned, and Sal Buscema, I think, arc in which the Masters of Evil invade the Avengers Mansion. But there's a great part of that where Eric Masterson is Thor at that time, but nobody knows. Know. So like every issue is like, Captain America say, "Hey Thor, old buddy, we got to do something about those Masters of Evil," and then you'll get the thought bubble where Eric Masterson is like, "If only I could tell them that I am not the Thor they know. I am Eric Masterson." That's just something I thought about. So have a clip from the trailer up here, and it appears. You tell me. It appears that when Jane shows up, I'm just guessing. Certainly they're on Earth because I see cars, right? But it appears to be New Asgard, just judging from the style of the building. So is it like New Asgard needs its protector? Thor is out in space, right? He gets the message. He shows up. But guess what? We don't need you because the Thor, we already have our Thor who's already like kicking ass down here.
And Thor's definitely dressed in like ancient Grecian style Hercules. Yes. He's got like a bear style robe. And I definitely think that there's going to be some fun conflict in that space, but also like Thor's probably going to give her I always knew, like when Cap picks it up, he's never going to be upset about it. He's just going to be like sad that's his ex-girlfriend and not his wife.
And my other man, I gotta say, New Asgard's looking great. They got cruise ships now.
Looking
it's
great.
A tourist
They're doing
destination.
well.
Oh, this is and finally, I guess whenever I think about Asgard on Earth, right? So in the comics, New Asgard is in Brockton, Oklahoma, of all places.
Yeah, and it's
right?
like just hovering,
just hovering above the plains, right? And then that becomes an issue because this was during the period of time in which Norman Osborn was like the leader of Earth's security apparatus, and of course is a villain, but pretending not to be a villain. And so one of the things he does is he lays siege to Asgard as this kind of like invading force on American soil. Like, why are you here? You shouldn't be here. You have to leave. And if you're not going to leave, we're going to make you leave. Man, I wonder if at some point in time, when just thinking about seeing that kind of negotiation underway with various parties kind of talking, and then Valkyrie sitting there like at the head of the table, I wonder if we get to a place at some point where Norway's like, you know what, this is just like causing a lot of problems. Could you please leave? And then we have the government, whatever the inheritor to S.H.I.E.L.D. is saying, okay, we're going to make you leave.
We know that a lot of, or we hypothesize that a lot of what we're seeing here is multiple teams. And that whole timeline is very huge in a villain version of the Avengers heroic team, So I think that it's incredibly likely that is something we'll see in our future.
Let's go to a quick mini Thor mailbag from a listener. Patrick asked, in advance of Thor Love and Thunder, I want to get into the Jason Aaron Thor comics run. Researching along, and I was a bit overwhelmed. Can you and Rosie do an essential reading on? Absolutely. Rosie, you want to take it away?
Yeah, so I think we'll start with where we've started from, which is Thor, God and Thunder. That is where we really establish the journey that Thor is going to go on. You have Jason Aaron, Asad Ribic, who they are literally just lifting stuff from that comic, issue 3. He's unbelievable.
His stuff is unbelievable.
Unbelievable. I would say that there's probably 2 comics that we're talking about, and that is going to be the first one. And the second one is obviously going to be
2014's Thor 1-8 with Russell Dauterman as the artist. That continues. That is the introduction of Jane Foster as the God of Thunder. And honestly, you can just read up from there.
Yeah.
Like, if you want to continue, go there. But those are the 2 places to start. Thor, God of Thunder, like 1-25. And then Thor, 1 to about 8 until Jane is revealed as Thor. But then you can just keep going.
Yeah.
And then for extra credit, we mentioned Original Sin, the crossover series, which is I hate when they number stuff 0, but fine. Numbered 0 through 8, which is not necessarily directly. It doesn't give you a lot of direct information, but it tells you why Thor doesn't have the hammer anymore. And sets up how Jane gets it.
You get into the idea of an unworthy Thor. Also, the other thing about Thor, God of Thunder that I didn't really mention is like, you're really going to learn about Gore there. You're going to learn about the God Butcher arc, and you're going to learn about the kind of horrible atrocities that we're likely going to see against God. In the trailer, we see a giant kind of mountainous white animal god, and Thor looks upon it sadly. And that's taken directly from Thor, God of Thunder issue 3, and Asad Ribic's incredible art and Jason's words. And it said, I knew that god. That's what Thor says. So you can get the notion that Thor is essentially going to be on this journey of self-discovery that gets derailed by Gore killing a lot of gods, and then somebody being like, oh, it's probably bad for you because you're a god, or bad for Jane, so then Thor's going to have to get involved.
Right. Well, that should hold you over. Those two arcs are just super great. And also, again, if you just want to start at anything that has Jason Aaron as the writer that is Thor, just start at Thor God of Thunder 1 and keep going, and you cannot go wrong.